afternoon, everyone. Well, at least it's afternoon for me as I'm sitting down to record this little episode of my podcast, Chatting with the Lightkeeper. I'm Edward, and I will be the one chatting with you for the next little bit. Over the weekend, I happened to catch a brief bit in between channel surfing of I'm not sure when it was from, but it's definitely it's been a while now. But the movie Tommy Boy with Chris I can't think of his last name now. Anyways, and David Spade. If you know Tommy Boy, you know who I'm talking about. But there is a scene, Chris Farley. That's it. Where Chris Farley's character, I believe his name was Tommy, caught David Spade's character, shall we say, engaging in a little self pleasure. And so Chris Farley's character, of course, couldn't resist poking fun. I don't think there's, you know, at least in the guy world, anybody that you have a friendship with or acquaintanceship with, if you kind of caught them doing that, that there wouldn't be a few subtle jokes. And the one that always kind of stuck with me is uh, so who's your favorite little rascal? Is it Alfalfa? I bet it's Spanky. Yeah, and I'm sure I wasn't perfect on the line. Um, don't get me wrong. I don't think Hollywood acting is going to be in my future. But that little ditty about the little rascals and who's your favorite kind of made me think a little bit about the lifestyle because I kind of have a joke. And sometimes I catch some heat for it, and I might catch a little flack after this podcast because there's a label within the lifestyle that I just don't care for. And today I'm going to talk about it and talk about it why and why I don't care for it. So the joke is that I will, amongst lifestyle friends who understand me and where it's coming from, but when I see somebody who identifies as an alpha, rather than alpha, I will refer to my favorite little rascal, and that would be alfalfa. So rather than be an alpha dom, I will jokingly with my friends call you an alfalfa dom. So if you're not offended by that, great. Hopefully, maybe a few of you even chuckled. Um, so I want to just try and explain how I feel. And once again, this is just my opinion. And, just that good old reminder that how you practice the lifestyle and the title that you find works for you, the role and how you define it that works for you is fantastic. But I just want to share some of my concerns with the alpha label. And in fact, on the male side, and that would be the alpha dom side. And I'll explain why I said the male side when I firmly believe roles, any person who identifies can be, any role. Why I said that because it, kind of sounds sexist, and that's one of my problems. I think with the alpha. Well, it is one of my problems with the alpha dominant side of things, but we'll get there. It's almost always made up of men, heterosexual men, who are looking for females to be their submissives. Yeah, it's kind of is sexist. The alpha dom is a guy. Um, yes, I'm sure somewhere out there is somebody who is not a heterosexual man that identifies as an alpha dom, but I haven't found them. And it doesn't mean they don't exist. I'm sure that they do. It's, especially with the internet and all, everything exists if you look hard enough. I just haven't looked hard enough, I'm sure. But the vast majority of these alpha dominants are men. They are straight men looking for females to be their submissives. And these guys always kind of remind me, going back to another old movie, Revenge of the Nerds. If you remember uh, going way back, the fraternity of jocks. This is sort of sadly how these alpha dominants typically come across. And um, a lot of them brag about like it's a requirement that their baloney pony is above a certain size or width or however the significance of a Tinky Winky, um, somehow like the size of the Tinky Winky has to do with their gifted, God's gift of being a dominant. Yeah, I've never understood that one, but that's seems to always be part of the alpha dom mythology. Um, and the other thing, of course, since they're men and talking about penis size, what comes next? Well, that comes their sexual prowess. Not only are they, gifted by God between the legs, they are gifted with using their gift. Um, and in fact, there's an alpha dominant that I saw where he explained that to his little, minions of mini alphas that if you ever have a female partner sexually who has complained that they've really never been satisfied in the bedroom, that's because they've never been with an alpha. And that's a good thing for you as an alpha because you are going to be just, like God's gift sexually to her. And I just, you excuse me, that this lifestyle is about, trust and leadership and all these wonderful things and yes, sex can be a wonderful component of a loving relationship, but yeah, not like that for this lifestyle for me. The other things that the alpha dom, wealth and power, are like a requirement to be a alpha dominant. And for me, the size of somebody's bank account shouldn't have anything to do with how good of a D type they are, or whether they're a bad D type, or average, mediocre, you know, or whatever. It shouldn't have anything to do with how many zeros or lack thereof of zeros are in one's bank account or their portfolio or any of that stuff. And also very much related to that is career choice. You are limited if you are an alpha dominant on your careers. I mean, you have to be a successful white collared, person to be a alpha dom. Sorry, you built a great business as a plumber and you started out as, yourself and your pickup truck and you've grown it into, a company that now, covers the whole United States. Yep, nope, sorry, you're a plumber. You're out. Your office is not on the top of a skyscraper in a corner where, with glass, floor to ceiling mirror or not mirrors. That would probably be the office bedroom. Sorry. But they don't have the floor to ceiling windows to look out across the metropolis and out across the office where they can, order their minions around. That's a component. It's just blah because once again how somebody makes their living, it doesn't relate to the role in the lifestyle. It just doesn't. Finally, here's the other part of it. I mean, you have got to be, Biff the bodybuilder to be an alpha dom. You have a dad bod? Sorry, you are not able to be there because the alpha dom has got abs of steel and they go to the gym and remind me of those guys at the gym that always grunt every time they lift. And it's just, drives me nuts. But it's another part of it. And I will say this yes, I do believe if you are a dominant, you need to take care of yourself. I am not saying you need to be Biff the bodybuilder. I certainly am not. Yeah, my body is far from perfect. Lord knows not only that, I have, some insecurities with it. I'd love not to, but hey, I do. I'm human. But yeah, physical fitness, I mean, to the extreme, if you will, from my perspective, is requirement for the alpha dominant. And, as I thought about this more and more, I always kind of feel that the alpha dominant, the guys that are taking the I am an alpha dom label, they're trying to market themselves. More than anything else, they are trying to stand out from the crowd. With all these wonderful things, that an alpha dom is supposed to have, a ginormous Todger, ginormous bank account, abs of steel, successful, all these wonderful things that they supposedly have. It's just marketing. They're trying to separate themselves from the sea of dominance out there, of other dominants, of other varieties, and just try and set themselves apart and kind of by marketing put themselves on top of their created pyramid. And since we do live in a copycat world, I'm sure the first guy who went out there and said, I am an alpha dom and thumped his chest, he found success. And so he told a buddy, and his buddy told a buddy, and suddenly we have alpha doms galore because successful things lead to other people following right along and trying to follow them to be successful. So the other thing that I've found with the alpha doms, since we're marketing and they're, talking about all these things that make them great, but have no actual, in my opinion, relevance to the lifestyle, more than anything, they're hiding behind their dominance or their alpha marketing title, the fancy marketing title, because they have some major insecurities. I truly believe that when you see see a guy, once again, we're talking guys, when you see a guy who's trying that hard to stand out from the crowd rather than just being themselves, hey, this is me, don't like me, I'm me. To me, that exudes more dominance than the guy who's trying to thump their chest and stand out from the crowd that way, because I think it shows something special about a person when they accept who they are, their flaws, their insecurities, have them, know they have them, we'll talk about them. And if somebody doesn't care for them, that's okay. They don't have to be on top of a food chain that they created to place themselves there. So the alpha dominant title for me is a huge red flag, because typically the things that they are claiming that make them stand apart from every other kind of dominant out there, from daddies to my, just plain Jane dominance. Yeah, it's a crutch for their insecurities, and therefore it's a big red flag for me. So that's just my opinion there. But since I've shared my opinion on the alpha dominant, well, just like everything in this lifestyle, there's a flip side. So before we flip the tables and talk about the flip side, I need to take a short break, share with you a message from my sponsor, and we'll come right back and we'll talk about the other side of the alpha world. So I look forward to chatting with you again in 2 minutes or less. All right, welcome back. Thank you for sticking with me through the little sponsorship message there. Anyway, now it's kind of time to get into the fun side, the side of the equation that I think if I'm going to ruffle any feathers, this is going to be the side of the coin where the feathers do get a little ruffled. Since we were talking about the alpha dominant, of course, the flip side is going to be the alpha submissive. And I am willing to bet that a few of you listening, probably more, maybe even more than a few, do either identify as an alpha submissive, or you've kind of kicked the idea of identifying that way around in your head. So I want to talk to you about why, in my opinion, alpha submissive is not the title to take. But once again, everybody walks their own path and their own journey in this. So I'm just sharing sharing my opinion and my thoughts. So that's all it is. Do what works best for you. The alpha submissive label really first started kind of floating around the wonderful world of the kinky internet in about 2015-ish. Um, and it's kind of, well, it hasn't kind of, it has steadily grown in the number of people that are taking alpha submissive as their identifier. Um, so before we get into what an alpha submissive is, let me just share with you what kind of my broad definition of what a submissive person is. For me, a submissive is a strong person who has or seeks another strong person to lead them in their relationship. And the submissive chooses that person and chooses to allow them to lead the relationship. Um, Now, the kind of the identifiers, and for this, I've gone to alpha submissives, reading some of their posts, some of their memes, and those who've kind of written on it. What makes an alpha submissive? Um, so they typically will say that the alpha submissive are people who are, like the alpha dom, successful in their career, um, or for example, people who that um, would appear to the vanilla world as never choosing to follow another person's lead. They are strong, capable people, which is just exactly what my definition of submissive is. Um, so some of the descriptors, the five most common like descriptive words that go with alpha submissive that I found are assertive, competitive, direct, independent, and this one is always going to be this one's kind of the fun one, opinionated. And that's how I kind of think that there's going to be some feedback for me on this podcast because opinionated people. And obviously we're kind of going to have to agree to disagree a little bit. Um, but those are all things that go with being, in my mind, being a submissive, being assertive. Um, in my past relationships, yes, my partner in the past, they've been submissive to me, but doesn't mean they weren't assertive with me or wouldn't speak up when, hey, you're going to look like an idiot if you do that. Or, hey, we better not do that because, they have no problem being assertive. They, to the outside world, would never have imagined allowing me to make the choices that I did for them. Um, Competitive, to a point. Competitiveness all kind of varies on the person. Some people are very competitive by nature. They just are. They're sporty people, or maybe they like to win at board games or cards or trivia, whatever it is. Various people can be either competitive or not. There are dominants out there who are really not that competitive. They could care less whether they win the next round of trivia or they win game night or they may not even be sporty. So competitive, yeah, that kind of all depends on the person. Being direct. I think anybody in the DS lifestyle has to have some directness in them because there are times when there are going to be direct conversations, hard conversations, and you need to be direct with it. I'm not saying you need to be a twat waffle about it, but you need to be, you can be direct and still be kind. There are times, no matter what side of the slash that you're on, you're going to need to be direct with somebody. So yeah, that comes into play. Independent, okay. It kind of gets to maybe the root of some of the alpha submissiveness. They're independent, whereas the people who are choosing to be alpha submissive see, and I hate to use this, but the only word that's coming to mind is those who are who allow life to kind of steamroll them as like they're submissive competitors, that they're somehow better than that because they're independent, they're not dependent, they don't need a dominant. They choose to have a dominant if they have one. It's their choice. They don't need it because they are independent and can take on the world and its challenges all by itself. Just when they have the right person, they will choose to submit to them. Okay. Yeah. Once again, our definition of submissive is the same. It just doesn't have you know, the alpha, or since I made the joke with the dominant side, I'll make it here. It doesn't have the alfalfa label attached to it. We're talking about the same thing here on the submissive side. The the other thing is a lot of the people who I identify, and like I said before, they're not. They feel that a traditional submissive, I guess, if you will, or a non-alpha submissive is somebody who kind of lets life steamroll them, knock them over. They can't do it because they're not independent. They depend on somebody to get through life. And the alpha submissive, they are strong and they're capable and they choose to follow the leader that they have picked. It's not because they need a leader. And to me, somebody who needs a leader is really not necessarily submissive. If you can't, if you are dependent in life, you that in my opinion, you're that's just who you are, and this lifestyle really isn't a fit for you because if you're so dependent, you're going to take whatever dominant comes along who tells you what to do because you're so dependent, and if you don't have somebody, you can't handle life, and you're not making submission a choice. And for me, submission and dominance it's all about making choices and choosing. So the other thing, just like the alpha dom was very sexist and it was, men seeking women, the alpha submissives are women seeking, guess what? Men. Um, it kind of flabbergasted me, and pretty much everything you see will be identifying the alpha submissive as a woman. There's not once I didn't find a alpha submissive male. I didn't find somebody who identifies, as something other than female taking this. And when I say female, being CIS, actually, it's just so it's there's it sort of smacks of sexism, and in a way that old ugly myth that and you see this old ugly myth everywhere online, especially on kink friendly sites. You'll see it everywhere, and it drives me bananas. A real man will do, or if you're a real man, you must be in charge. That real men or real man malarkey. I mean, there are people out there who have seen their memes and stuff. I'm not a real man because I don't have a beard. Yep, imagine that. Don't have a beard. Yeah, I'm clean shaven, shave my head, shave my face. I have all my hair on my head, all my hair on my face. I just shave it. It's me. It's what I do. But because I don't look like I am a cast member from Duck Dynasty, I'm not a real man. Um, I'm not a hunter. Therefore, I'm not a real man. We can go on and on with the list of what makes or doesn't make a real this or a real that. But in a way, the alpha submissive thing is propagating that malarkey that real men, must be in charge in a relationship. Well, what does that say about a man who's submissive? What does that say about a switch who's a guy? He's not a real man because, he doesn't want to lead the relationship because that's just not how he's wired, and he's come to realize that he is submissive. Just that drives me nuts, and it's you you can't escape it. Anywhere in the lifestyle is the real man or a real submissive or a real dominant will or a fake dominant will do. It just drives me bananas. In a way, the alpha submissive label being women seeking to serve men is propagating that old myth that man must lead relationship. Thumb chest. Um, the other thing that I see, and it's very common with those who identify as alpha submissives, they are one of two things. Typically, either newer to the lifestyle or they don't have much in person lifestyle experience. Meaning, they may have been around the lifestyle, they may write about the lifestyle, they may podcast about the lifestyle, they may blog about it. And I'm not saying that they're not intelligent people with great opinions, great ideas, and great things to share, because many of them are. Um, but they don't have the in person experience. And there is a vast difference between living a DS relationship versus one where it's sort of nights and weekends, kind of well, I can come, visit the second and third weeks of the month, weekends of the month, and while we're together, Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, we'll play DS House, and then we go back to online and text messages, and there's a vast difference between actually having a real world relationship versus the online or the part-time DS relationship. And all those are great if that's what you can have or that's what works for you. I mean, life is not easy. It's not conducive to perfection, but there is a difference between the internet DS, the way it feels, the way things happen and how things flow versus what happens in real life. And a lot of times the alpha submissives are typically lacking that real world experience. And also, just like on the dominant side, it's marketing. I mean, the alpha submissive is right away, kind of saying, "Hey, I'm an alpha submissive. I am a better submissive than just plain Jane submissive because." We can go back to our little list. I'm assertive, I'm competitive, I'm direct, I'm independent, and hey, I'm opinionated, let me tell you. And that's great, but that makes you a submissive. All those things they make you just. I'm sorry, you're a submissive. Um, so it's once again it's marketing. And the other thing I did because I know that my opinions sometimes are unique, and I was just curious. I've been around for a few rodeos and I've made some friends and acquaintances in real life that also are involved in the lifestyle. And I reached out to them and kind of get their opinions. And these are people that I would consider veterans, and in fact, a few of them are more mature than me and have leveled up age-wise more than I have, and have seen so much more than I have. Um, and they also kind of shared the same opinion that I have, that once again the alpha label is kind of it's kind of like the old Roman soldier carrying their shield, and it's that shield to kind of protect them from having to share their insecurities. And so I'm thankful that I wasn't alone. And once again, I know some of you folks listening along at home or wherever you're listening, will disagree with that. But that is also something that especially amongst people who have seen, a few lifestyle rodeos, kind of see it as an insecurity shield. Um, and another thing that I thought about as I thought about, many of the people who take alpha submissive and the fact that there's often a lot of inexperience with those people who choose that label is that they are kind of taking the alpha label because while they do indeed, want to submit to an amazing partner that they pick, um, they also might still be, since they're new exploring, there's very possibly could still be some bit of dominance inside them. They want to, they want to kind of control. They want to lead a bit too. They don't want to just sit back and submit. There's a little bit of that. I want to lead um, in there too, and that alpha kind of allows that to kind of manifest itself. It's I have leadership in me too. I'm not just submissive. I wanna lead too, and that leads me to wonder, and this is just conjecture on my part. Obviously, there's no statistics or any way to really analyze this, but um, one of the most overlooked, especially when you look at places where people who are newer to the lifestyle go. It seems like there's pressure even from within the lifestyle, from just how it's structured, to either be dominant or submissive. But we know that there's definitely, there's other roles. There's tops, people who like during play to be dominant, but perhaps outside of the play realm they don't want to be dominant. There are bottoms who want to, the opposite of the top. But the big role that I think is often overlooked is that of a switch. Somebody who, depending on typically depending on who the partner is, what the partner draws out of them. They could be submissive to this person, but this other person, they would be very dominant with. It's just how the personality clicks and meshes. And being a switch doesn't mean you have to be poly. I don't want to imply that, you have partner A who you're submissive to and partner B who you're dominant to, and switches you have to have multiple partners. No, it doesn't have to be that way. In fact, it's not often. But typically switches will kind of, depending on the vibe and how things click with a partner, will their role could change, or perhaps they are, with another switch, and how things evolve between them determines their role. A switch doesn't mean, and I think sometimes people who are new somehow think switch is like an indecisive lifestyle role that okay, on the days where they wake up on the left side of the bed, that means they're submissive, and when they wake up on the right side, that's their dominant days. And it doesn't work like that. Once again, normally it's based on the kind of the energy or the vibe between people and how what clicks. And it doesn't mean that, well, I can't pick a side because, I like this, so I kind of like the submissive side, and I like that over there, so I'm kind of the dominant. It doesn't mean that you can't pick. It doesn't mean you're indecisive. In fact, I would think that a switch would be very much more, possibly even more in touch with themselves and what's going on in their mind than many dominants and many pure submissives are, because they have to be in touch to understand themselves and how that dynamic plays out. So I think rather than kind of be hidden or misunderstood, if you're newer and you're taking the alpha submissive title, because you kind of do have that, I want to lead too. I don't want to just you know be led. I want to lead too. Maybe consider that switch might be something to consider or look into. Um, and I think some of the alpha submissive labeling might be people that might actually fall in, as a switch. Um, and finally, because it's DS, there's really no hard and fast rules. But since we've talked about while the alpha label is something that I do see kind of as a warning flag, there are places where I will admit where if I see the alpha label used, it's not a warning flag. In fact, it tells me something different. Um, and that's within the lifestyle. There are many relationships where there's a hierarchy, and I don't mean, that in that relationship where that person's dom and that person there is submissive. I don't mean that like as a hierarchy, but typically these are relationships that involve multiple partners, poly relationships, or even groups of lifestyle friends. If they run, say, for example, in a pack, you know, somebody in that pack maybe a leader of the pack. So if you see things where like alpha submissive used in a poly relationship, it's being used to define the pecking order of the submissives that are underneath the dominant. And the same with those who are, in a primal group, or, you know, are running in a pack. Oftentimes those identifiers, you'll see an alpha used there because they're identifying kind of how the leadership role within their group flows and is set. And so there it makes perfect sense to me. And it's not a warning. It's just, this group is expressing, this group or this relationship is expressing the hierarchy that extends within their group. So, for me, that's something that makes perfect sense and is perfectly fine. No issues there. Um, and I know that we just talked about alpha submissive and alpha dominant, but I kind of want to flip back to one more thing about the alpha dominant before I wrap up. The alpha dominant often has to be seen as, he's the leader of his friends, he's the leader of his peer group. In family circles, he's the one who, leads the family get-togethers. It's always his idea to do this, and it's his idea to do that. And the more you kind of think about it and just kind of roll with me here, what do we call people that everything has to be their idea, their choice, their, they are number one. And if you don't agree with them, um, things are never their fault. They never make mistakes. They always blame somebody else. And if you're their relationship partner, they'll probably blame you for their mistakes. What do we call these fine pieces of uniqueness? Narcissist. And it doesn't mean that every alpha dominant is a narcissist, but it is kind of a it's a narcissistic red flag. So just kind of keep that in mind too. And I'm sorry I didn't include that, before the break when we were talking about alpha doms, but it just kind of popped into my head as I was about to sign off. So, anyways, I just wanted to end by saying that I understand that people will see things differently than I do. And that's perfectly fine. I'm just sharing my thoughts, kind of food for thoughts. If you do identify as an alpha, either as a dominant or submissive, um, that's fabulous. I just hope that you might take a minute and evaluate, why you think as you do, and remember what works for you is great. There are wrong ways to get your kink, but choosing to identify as an alpha dominant or submissive, hey, that's not a wrong way. That's just what's right for you. Um, obviously we're not going to see eye to eye on it, but that's one of the wonderful things about the lifestyle is that we can agree to disagree. And anyway, yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful October, and I don't hope, I don't wish that anybody is having a scary bad October. So I hope everyone's October is off to a scary good start at this point. And I look forward to chatting with you in a few weeks. Thank you for listening. I'll talk with you soon.